this morning. Daniel's here in Washington, D.C. Good morning. You're on the Washington Journal.
Good morning. Good morning. The weather reports are interesting because the Gulf of Mexico is 2 degrees warmer than normal. It's 87 degrees. That's hot for water, very hot. And it's interesting how few people are just saying this is exactly the model of climate change and global warming. We need to stop these oil industry ads on TV that are massaging us. We're not wasting energy. We're not big fat pigs. We're doers, according to Chevron. And we got to get rid of these TV ads, just like we did with ads for cancerous cigarettes. We got to get rid of these TV ads for the cancerous oil industry. Stop the pipelines everywhere. They're setting up fossil fuel use for the next 200 years. Is that sick? Is that insane? Now you know what it's like to have a sociopath in the White House, and that's another thing that needs to reform. This is insane, the power we've given to this presidency.
That's Daniel in D.C. Here's a story from the Washington Times focusing on the impact on the energy sector. The story noting that the federal government says Harvey has had a major impact on oil refineries in the region. As of Monday afternoon, at least 98 offshore drilling platforms, more than 13% of all platforms in the Gulf of Mexico, have been evacuated due to the storm. Nearly 19% of all oil production in the Gulf, or 331,000 barrels per day, have been temporarily stopped. More than 18% of natural gas production has also been shut down due to the storm. In addition to the production decline, it's estimated as much as 3 million barrels worth of oil refining capacity is offline right now. Major energy firms such as Shell, Exxon, Mobil, Valero Energy, and others have closed refineries in the region. At least 10 refineries have suspended their operations. That region, a central hub of all U.S. oil refining and natural gas processing. You want to read more from that story? It's in the Washington Times. Stacy in McLean, Virginia. Good morning.
Good morning, John. Thank you for taking my call. Good morning, America. What I find most disturbing about this entire thing is that our so-called political leaders, the climate deniers, they should have been preparing their citizens for such an event. By denying that this stuff could ever happen, they actually endangered the lives of millions of people. And it's only because they've been giving campaign money to spread these lies. And what has done, they've all got blood on their hands. Trump going down there is not going to make the situation any better. It made it worse. He added to the problems by not addressing it from the beginning. We need real leadership. We need people who are going to protect the people, not their political campaigns or their donors.
We have a special line for residents of Texas and Louisiana this morning. 202-748-8002 is that number. Otherwise, the Eastern and Central time zones, 202-748-8000. Mountain and Pacific time zones, 202-748-8001. Ben's in Texas, in Conroe, Texas. Where's Conroe, Texas, Ben?
It's 46 miles from Houston. Well, you know, Texas taking care of itself. Like they said, Trump don't need to come down here, man. He's taking away from our resource. And, you know, man, I just like to say, man, the flood water is just, you know, Texas is just, well, my road, it's 2 houses down from me, and it's over the mailbox. But I'm not worried about it because I'm like up the hill, so the water ain't going to get to me. So me and my friends finna go out right now and try to help somebody. Well, I got to see y'all later. Thanks for talking to me.
Ben, how are you going to help some folks? What are you planning on doing today? Ben had to go help some folks. Robert is in Garland, Texas. Good morning.
Good morning, sir. First of all, thank you so much for C-SPAN for being such an informative, educational, and for us here in the United States. Other things, my prayers go to all the victims there, and I salute my fellow citizens for helping out with the tragedy that occurred here in Southwest Texas. I would just say if C-SPAN could be looking into some aspects of the fact that about urban renewal or building codes in the Houston area. I heard that was something that has been discussed in other media things, whether or not there was enough outlets for water runoff, in a sense. And also I heard, and I was reading that the state of Texas has somewhat of a $10 billion rainy day fund that they may tap into to help with the relief there. And also I want you to look at, there's a tremendous amount of thrift businesses in Texas, especially Goodwill Industries, that's out in Austin and also up in Dallas here. Now, they get donations that are free, and they have a lot of apparel that could be used for relief efforts for the victims down there, and to look into that to see if those not so-called non-profit organizations are contributing to this relief fund. The other thing about the oil thing, that for a year and a half on another station, CNBC, I've been hearing that there's not only a nationwide glut of oil or gas, that a lot of times refineries over the last year and a half have stopped working because they just can't store these gas or oil, in a sense, to be for use. And now in Texas, I know that the major oil companies are starting to raise their price of gasoline at the pumps. It's something for you to look into in terms of how to help the rest of the people of Texas during this tragic time. Thank you for the wonderful job that you do.
Robert, appreciate all that. On the first part of your question or comments about what we should look into on the growth and development of Houston, let me show you this from the Wall Street Journal. You might want to check it out yourself. This map showing the population growth of the Houston metro area. This is the Houston and city limits from 1990 and 2015. The darker green is the population density of those areas. You can see the growth from 1990 to 2015. The story noting that its population grew by more than 12% in 2016 to 4.6 million from 2010, adding about 100,000 residents every year. The influx of people, of course, required more housing and more infrastructure that led to more development. And also there's the drainage system in the Houston area. The area's drainage system built for a 10-year flood, and Houston officials have been trying to build up existing drainage networks to a 25-year flood level, but it's a costly process, the Wall Street Journal notes. The city's geography also inhibits proper drainage. It's low-lying, and most of its soil is clay, which doesn't drain very well. So the Wall Street Journal going through the growth, the development, and then the drainage, all leading to where we are now, what we're seeing in Houston today and this week. We've got phone lines this morning, a special line for Texas and Louisiana residents. 202-748-8002 is that number. Otherwise, if you're in the Eastern or Central time zones, 202-748-8000. Mountain and Pacific time zones, 202-748-8001. Want to get your thoughts on the impact to the region, on the recovery efforts, the expected years-long recovery efforts. So give us a call this morning. Also wanted to show you yesterday, Texas Governor Greg Abbott, who will be joining President Trump on his trip down to Texas today, spoke about the performance of the federal government in response to Harvey. Here's what he had to say.
The state of Texas has been dealing with the federal government for about 7 to 10 days at least before the hurricane hit on a daily basis, frequently multiple times during the day. I've spoken with the president on multiple occasions, with his cabinet members ranging from the Secretary of Health and Human Services, Homeland Security, Transportation, Energy. I'm leaving some out, but also the FEMA administrator. And I would have to grade the federal government's response as an A+. This is, if not the largest, has to be categorized as one of the largest disasters America has ever faced. And to see the swift response from the federal government is pretty much unparalleled. And so we are grateful for what's happened so far, but we know we're still early in the process. We need to maintain this.
It's been 56 years since a major hurricane made landfall in Texas. That was, of course, before Harvey hit as a Category 4 last week, dumping some 20 trillion gallons of water on Texas and especially Houston and the surrounding areas. The highest recorded gusts of wind during the hurricane, 132 miles an hour in Port Aransas, Texas. That was Friday night. Maximum sustained winds, 130 miles per hour. And of course, we've been seeing the fallout since then. Getting your thoughts this morning on the destruction, on the recovery effort, on the rescue efforts, especially the efforts of the federal government and the state government. Randy is in Ohio this morning. Good morning. You're on the Washington Journal.
How you doing?
Doing well. Go ahead.
Hey, I'm getting tired of people downing Trump. You know what? These people need to understand that they're lucky to have a president who cares about everybody. You know, the guy is coming down there. He didn't want to go down there to interrupt things. But these same people complain when Bush flew over New Orleans. These people, these liberals need to get over, man. They lost. America voted for Trump. He's doing a lot more than Obama ever did. Obama never liked America. He wanted to give us over to the world. Trump is trying to do everything he can. And these people want to just blame him for everything.
Down in Texas. We lost Randy. James in Bradenton, Florida. Good morning.
Good morning.
Go ahead.
Sure. I just wanted to say I was in Waveland, Mississippi for Hurricane Katrina, and I don't know exactly what they're going through, but I can say that my heart and my thoughts are to those people in Texas, and I don't have a political comment. I just wanted to say that I think this is a time for everyone to realize what they're going through, and it's going to be a long, long recovery. So I wish them nothing but the best, and I hope that the federal government, the state government, and all the nonprofits working on it can do everything they can to make it as quick as possible.
Thanks for the call, James. We've been showing you some of the Getty images, some of the video that's been released. Here's some of the still images from various newspapers, various national papers this morning, including a double truck page here in the New York Times showing some of the various images of the recovery and rescue efforts taking place. Brenda, Houston, Texas. Brenda, how you doing this morning? Where are you in Houston?
Let's see. I'm on the I-45 and the Beltway 8. And I hate to say this, but I'm feeling awfully bad, and I'm probably going to follow the lady that called earlier and go out and see what I can do today, because I got maybe a puddle of water outside of my French doors. So I've been very, very blessed, very, very blessed, and wow, but that's not the reason why I called. I wasn't going to call because I didn't think this was the time to be political. But that elderly guy that you just had that was inarticulate, but he was articulate enough to want to badger the woman who called in and didn't want Trump to come. I, too, would rather he didn't, but he can do whatever he wants. I could care less in that regard. But I want to comment, don't bring President Obama's name up. And you think this president cares about you? You keep watching, you small-minded individuals. You keep watching how he does. Start using your brains and not your hatred. So that's all I basically have to say. And I want to correct you also, John, on last week. A lady called in saying, why are the numbers switched every month? Please tell me it's not what I'm saying. I want to tell that lady it's exactly what you think. I've been watching C-SPAN since Brian Lamb was in a small room with no windows, and that was in I think February of 79, because I started work March of 79. I started my career, and I'm now retired. So, no, they were complaining. They nearly drove Brian and a couple of others that he had at the time, nearly drove them crazy. And so they agreed to switch those two lines. They do not switch the independents. They never call in and complain.
So, Brenda, I know Brian Lamb always loved taking calls and chatting with folks. So it's been several years now, since well before I started doing this, that they've been switching those lines. Democrats on top at the beginning of one month, Republicans on top at the next. It's how we do it, just to try to keep the numbers moving, to try to ensure that nobody feels that one side is on top more than the other. So, but I appreciate the call. Thanks for bringing up the topic again. Bob, Trenton, New Jersey. Go ahead.
Yeah, this is just some food for thought for all the political minded out there that are doing or criticizing. How much money is the Hillary Clinton Foundation? How much are they sending to Texas? Food for thought, people. They're sending zero. Wake up, America. Hillary's crooked. Thank you.
Bob, what do you think about the president's visit down to Texas today? What should he say when he's down there?
I think it's why not go down there? Obama went down. Every other president does it, but all of a sudden Trump does it. It's no good. I mean, these people the hypocrisy is just, it stinks so loud. Yeah, he can go down there. He's a builder. He could have ideas. He can mobilize and get things done faster. Look at what he did to a skating ring in New York. Every other project he touches in New York, he brings it in faster and under budget. Why don't you think it could happen now, people? Wake the hell up.
Nandy is in Coleman, Washington this morning. Good morning.
All right, so the idea that Trump cares about the American people much more than you're saying that Obama did, just because Trump has helped out the coal miners, he's been doing this and he's been doing that. Let's take a look at the private industry that has been backing him this entire time, and his private interests and his special interests that he's been looking out for this entire time, throughout this entire presidency.
Okay. Irene, Crossville, Tennessee. Good morning. We've lost Irene. We have a special line this morning for Texas and Louisiana residents. Louisiana, because that's where Harvey is headed to next. The White House and federal emergency officials turning their focus to Louisiana in the past 24 hours. President Trump declaring several parishes in southwest Louisiana federal disaster areas on Monday, and said he may visit the storm-damaged areas in that state this coming weekend, specifically on Saturday. If you're in Louisiana, give us a ring. Want to know how you're preparing, especially after you've viewed what's happened, especially in Houston and the surrounding areas in the past couple days. Allison, Baltimore, Maryland. Go ahead.
Good morning. Thank you for taking my call.
Go ahead.
I'm actually driving to a birth this morning, so I want to make this brief.
Be careful.
Thank you. Hurricane Harvey is ushering in many miracles this morning, as well as tragedy. The pressure change will cause many women to go into labor, as it has done for my client. So I just wanted to say a couple things. If you wouldn't mind mentioning on air where people possibly make donations to help those in need. And also, the pressure change does cause labor, so there are probably a lot of expectant mamas in Texas who are going into labor. And with the flooding, they may be having problems getting to the hospital. So anyone who could potentially volunteer to help get some mamas to the hospital, I'm sure that the hospital would appreciate it. They can probably call and see if they need volunteers to help drive anyone.
Allison, thanks for bringing it up, and good luck with your very important effort this morning. You mentioned donations. Yesterday we were talking to Sheila Jackson-Lee. She was encouraging donations to the American Red Cross. The American Red Cross encouraging those donations on their webpage, as well as an easy place to do that. We're showing you some of the Getty images from the destruction in the Houston area this morning, and getting your thoughts, your reaction to the federal response, the state response, your thoughts on what is expected to be a years-long recovery effort. The Washington Post, in their lead editorial today, calling it A flood of courage in Houston, a massive and inspiring volunteer rescue response is what they focus on, the efforts of those individuals who are helping out, not just those on the federal level and state level, but those who are volunteering their time. Also, a story on the economic cost. USA Today focusing on some of the estimates that are already out, calling that part of the country a key cog in the U.S. economic engine. Moody's Analytics estimates the storm will result in $30 billion to $40 billion in property damage and about $7 billion in lost economic output as most restaurants, hotels, and retailers stay shuttered this week. The region plays an outsized role in the U.S. economy. Its projected gross output of $441 billion this year represents 2.4% of the nation's economy, but that doesn't tell the entire story. It's among the top 3 hubs for oil refineries. It's the largest center for chemical production. It boasts the number 2 shipping port, and it contains 2 of the nation's busiest airports there in the Houston region. If you want more on that, that's in today's USA Today. William, Fort Lauderdale, Florida. Go ahead.
Good morning, John. How you doing? I just want to comment that I hope people will learn a lot from this particular incident, which is a tragedy for the whole nation. But in infrastructure and in rebuilding the infrastructure after this flood clears out is going to be extremely important. So therefore, I think it's vital for the president to be there. He's a natural builder. And he's a guy that can just take a look at things and tell you how to fix them. So I think it's important for his trip, and I think it's important that the Texans learn something. Here in Florida, we are required to have X amount of land for every land usage. I don't know, in Texas, I see a lot of concrete there, and so therefore, if you're building concrete, water can't seep into the ground. So they might learn something from this and help our infrastructure project, because it not only has to do with building highways and bridges, but also has to do with building things like water and sewer runoff, and that's what I think we should learn from this. Thank you for taking my call.
William, thanks for the call this morning. In terms of what this will mean for the folks who work in that building behind me on Capitol Hill, New York Times focusing on the Hurricane Harvey adding to the urgent problems and the already full plate facing Congress. The story noting that Congress already is contending with a potential government shutdown deadline on October 1st, a must-pass measure to raise the government's statutory borrowing limit. That's the debt ceiling. We've talked about that recently on this program. And we've also, of course, talked about the tax reform effort that's underway. A very busy September coming up for Congress, and with efforts already to move a relief bill to shore up the National Flood Insurance Program, a lot being added to Congress's plate. We'll be talking about a lot of those different programs today and in the days and weeks to come. Jeanne is in Arcadia, Louisiana. Jeanne, good morning. Are you preparing for Harvey's impact over there?
Well, somewhat, because I live in the northern area. We probably won't get it as bad, but in the southern part, it's already flooding. But what I want to say is, yesterday, I was listening to Fox News, and they were very critical of the Democratic mayor of Houston, who is a Democrat, and he is also black. They were suggesting that the governor of Texas, Governor Abbott, wanted mandatory evacuation. Now, I spoke with my sister who lives in Houston, Texas, and she said the mayor of Houston made the right decision not to have a mandatory evacuation because they were not sure where they were going to have flood, and it would have been just a catastrophe trying to get almost 6 million people out of Houston. And she lives on the north side, and she has had no flooding. So, she felt that the mayor of Houston made the right decisions, and she suggests that anybody that does not live in Houston, Texas, keep their comments to themselves. And one thing about President, what he has done, he has asked the people to donate to the Red Cross so these people can be helped. And I should say this, that as far as number 45, he could not fix his way out of a paper bag. Thank you.
That's Jeanne in Louisiana. In terms of whether to evacuate or not, the editorial board of the USA Today noting that they believe local officials were correct in not ordering a mass evacuation, spending their lead editorial today focusing on the lessons from past storms. They write evacuation orders typically involve coastal communities of tens of thousands of people. The Houston metro area, the nation's fourth largest, has 6.6 million people. Its roads and rails simply aren't equipped to handle such a large exodus. Even if people could get out of town, where would they go? It would be all but impossible to find housing for millions of people, particularly for long periods of time. What's more, the act of evacuation itself can be hazardous. This was the lesson from Hurricane Rita in 2005. In that instance, an estimated 2.5 million people took to the highways, heeding evacuation orders. The ensuing gridlock was so severe that waits in traffic of 20 hours or longer were not uncommon. Fights broke out as panicked would-be evacuees vented their fears and frustrations on the highway. And the typically high temperatures of Houston in the summer led to numerous cases of heat stroke. More than 100 people died trying to flee Houston in that evacuation, including 24 from a nursing home whose bus caught on fire. The lessons from past storms. We're going to be talking about natural disasters and how presidents handle those disasters and the lessons from it with Tevi Troy, presidential historian, coming up in about 30 minutes this morning on the Washington Journal. Nicole, Mesquite, Texas. Good morning.
Good morning. I just want to say that I feel bad for the people in Houston. It's so weird to be here in Mesquite, the Dallas area, and see so many people suffering and down below us in the South. And it seems like there's nothing going on in Texas. It just shows you how big Texas is. So it's just hard to see. I've been crying on and off pretty much every time I see a sad news story. But I also don't think that I was watching the news and they asked President Trump about the pardon. And he said that he released a pardon at the time of the hurricane because he wanted to get bigger ratings. So for that reason, I think 45, I made a mistake in calling him president, 45 should stay away. I want him to go to his golf resort and go golf and ride around and go hop in big fire trucks and play with the horn and stuff like that. I want him to completely stay away because he's a very negative force, and I feel like that he's just doing it for popularity. So I want him to go golf, go to Mar-a-Lago, go back to Trump Tower, just stay busy for the next 2.5 years or 4 years or whatever's left in his term. Stay away. Go and don't do anything to the country. Don't touch anything.
Got your point, Nicole. You bring up the president's comments about the pardoning of Joe Arpaio for those who missed it. Here's the president's comments from yesterday.
President Obama commuted the sentence of Chelsea Manning, who leaked countless sensitive and classified documents to WikiLeaks, perhaps and others, but horrible, horrible thing that he did. Commuted the sentence and perhaps pardoned. President Obama commuted the sentence of Oscar Lopez Rivera, who was charged as part of a violent independence group from Puerto Rico responsible for 28 Chicago area bombings and many deaths in the 1970s and 1980s. Sheriff Joe is a patriot. Sheriff Joe loves our country. Sheriff Joe protected our borders, and Sheriff Joe was very unfairly treated by the Obama administration, especially right before an election that he would have won. So, and he was elected many times. So I stand by my pardon of Sheriff Joe, and I think the people of Arizona who really know him best would agree with me.
And an interesting story out of Arizona yesterday. After receiving President Trump's pardon, Joe Arpaio plans have gone from possible prison to book writing speeches and potentially another run for office in Arizona, with Senator Jeff Flake's seat one opportunity that he's eyeing. The former sheriff told the Washington Examiner he's upset at the negative reaction to Friday's pardon and that he feels Republican politicians are insufficiently supportive of the president, who he calls a great man. I could run for mayor, I could run for legislator, I could run for Senate, Arpaio said on Monday. He particularly pointed to the Jeff Flake seat. I'm sure getting a lot of people around the state asking me to challenge Flake, he said. All I'm saying is the door's open and we'll see what happens. I've got support. I know what support I have. That story in the Washington Examiner if you want to read more on it. And one other non-Hurricane Harvey story, but also getting a lot of attention today. North Korea launched a ballistic missile over Japan on Tuesday in the latest in a string of direct provocations that destabilized the region, triggered global alarm. The missile, the first Pyongyang has fired over Japan's main island since 2009, prompted a fiery response from the Japanese Prime Minister. The Wall Street Journal noting that Mr. Abe called for an emergency meeting of the United Nations Security Council. He said he spoke by phone with President Trump for 40 minutes and that the president gave a strong commitment to Japan's security. The White House today putting out a statement about that missile launched by North Korea. The statement from the president reading that the world has received North Korea's latest message loud and clear. This regime has signaled its contempt for its neighbors, for all members of the United Nations, and for minimum standards of acceptable international behavior. Threatening and destabilizing actions only increase the North Korean regime's isolation in the region and among all nations of the world. All options are on the table, the president said in that statement released just this morning. Andre, up next in McCormick, South Carolina. We're talking about Hurricane Harvey, the destruction, the recovery, the rescue efforts. Andre, your thoughts?
Yes, good morning. I'm a member of Justice Democrat. It's a new movement that I hope your listeners will look into. I believe that a lot of
What is it, real quick, Andre?
Yeah, a lot of this, I believe, is because of climate change. And, of course, what's going to happen, the oil companies have been knowing about this climate change for years now, and they're going to end up getting the biggest tax breaks, and it's just wrong. So that's my opinion.
Andre, what's the goal of Justice Democrats?
The goal of Justice Democrat is to hold accountable these oil companies. It's been known for years that there's been global warming and that they did everything in their power to stop the scientists, from doing their research and coming up with very good solutions. And the poorest of our people around the world actually is going to pay the first, going to be the ones to pay for this.
And is this a grassroots organization, or are there leaders of this group?
Yes, there's a lot of leaders. A lot of people are joining. TYT is the ones that started this, and I'm a member of it, and I hope your listeners just look into it. That's all I ask. There's no money. Just join if you like what you hear, and I hope everybody the best.
Diane's up next. Conyers, Georgia. Good morning.
Diane Willingham. Yeah, I'm calling because it's just like when Katrina happened. President Bush let all the African Americans drown down there. Now it's in Texas. Y'all trying to help him. And Donald Trump, he's a racist, sexist bigot. And I didn't vote for him anyway. I didn't vote for him. I voted for Hillary Clinton because she was the best dang candidate for that dang office.
Diane, will you listen to the president if he speaks down in Texas today, and if he does, what do you want him to say?
Help him. They didn't help him. They did not help him, and that's all I gotta say.
All right, Kenneth, Tulsa, Oklahoma. Good morning.
Morning, sir. How you doing?
I'm doing well.
Yeah, I just have a few things to say. I give my remembrances to the people in Texas. My brother lives down there. He says he lives in Waco. I just have a couple of things to say. First thing, I want to know what Trump has did, because these people come over here and they say that Trump has did this and Trump has did that. For example, let's talk about Mosul. In the Obama administration, they started Mosul. They were the one that started that. Even in his era, they said it was going in. Trump just came on his coattails. That's all he did. About the stock market, what has he done? He didn't do that in the stock market. Obama's reparation of a job economy started the stock market going up. He just came in on his coattail. The only thing that Trump did is cause racial strife in America. And
Kenneth, at what point will President Trump, should he start getting credit for the economy? He's been in office about 7 months.
When he don't start letting on other people's sweat, and when he comes in office at an opportune time, then he wants to take credit for it. You know, just like with Mexican treatment. Now he wants to shut down the government because Mexican ain't gonna pay for the wall. What he says now, oh well, we gonna make them pay. We gonna make them remunerators after we done shut down the government. That's stupid. And another thing, because last year, or what was that, Sandy? Last year,
yes.
When Obama was in office, and these people were suffering from a hurricane, and he comes down there, and he interrupts, and I say interrupts, by bringing his, limousine and 4 or 5 SUVs going through that country. And what did he do when he went down there? Did he help anybody? This one guy was talking about somebody, what did Hillary Clinton do? Well, what did Trump do? You know, when he went down there to Sunday last year, all he did was pass out campaign hats. So that's about all I got to say.
All right. Arthur, Memphis, Tennessee. Go ahead.
Yes, I just want to say what goes around comes around. You remember those 2 senators from Texas didn't want to get those people money for the Sandy?
Yes. You're talking about Senator Cornyn and Senator Cruz in Texas.
Yes, and see, now they need help. And now what they going to do? See, it don't pay to be so low down. Thank you.
Yesterday, Senator